Good morning. Welcome to another Fast Tracks webinar. Webinars are weekly events designed to help you learn how to fully utilize our software in order to help your business grow. You can sign up for our webinars by going to our website at goftx.com, clicking on the FTx Lifeline, scrolling all the way down until you see webinars. From this screen, you can see all of our past webinars, as well as sign up for our new and up-and-coming ones. Today, we're going to be talking about locations and how to manage locations in the Cloud POS system. So starting off, we're going to go to the dashboard of Cloud POS in Control Center. From here, we're going to click on Point of Sale, Maintenance, and then Locations. From this point, we can see all of our locations that we currently have set up. But today we're going to talk about how to actually set one up. So if you're trying to add a new location, you can hit Add New. From here, you have your location name, which price book zone you want to assign it to, what type of location it is, whether it's retail or a warehouse, the store number that you're assigning to it, what time zone that it is in, and then if you have a location group set up, you can assign it to the location group, and we'll cover that a little bit later in this webinar. Omit from offline report. Basically, if you have any reports that are being ran offline, this store will not be accounted for in that. Hide from customer, and then you have the account number for the location. Clicking on the Location and Contact tab will let you put in the location's physical address, their street address, the city that it's in. You can choose what state that it's in, the zip code, and the phone number. Now, all of this is really good if you are needing to contact your stores but only have access to their information through the Control Center. Next up, we're going to go to API connections. If you have an API that you're connecting to, you put in your host here and the port number. Now, this is optional. You don't have to actually do this, but it is an option that we provide. You can go to your schedules. And what this does is allow you to select the times that this store is supposed to be open and closed. If you have this location set up to be open only during the week and closed on the weekends, you can set that up in here. And then the last tab we have is online order settings. You can use global or a custom. So we're not actually going to be setting up any order settings, so we're just going to give it a store number of 21. We're not going to assign it to a group just yet. So we're going to save this. Oh. Just give it a little location here. Now, this information is required to actually set up a location. Now that we got that filled out, we're going to save it. Now when you create a location, you can see here that it's going to ask for the tax rates. Now, normally you would actually set up the tax rates before setting up the location so that as you're setting it up, you can apply them correctly. In this scenario, I did not go through setting up taxes, but we do have some previously here. So we are going to give it a tax group that Mr. Eddie had created before, and we're just going to give it a standard tax rate. Value, we'll just give it 50. Now you can skip this until later, but for this scenario, we'll go ahead and set this up. So we're going to save. Oh. Now that we have set up this location, you can notice here at the top right, Manage POS Settings. This is actually a neat little function that is exclusive to Cloud, and it allows you to very quickly manage your point of sale settings for specific locations. Now I can show you how to do that in Mass here in a moment, but for this, we're going to click on Manage POS Settings under this location, and this is going to give us a list of every single setting within the POS for that store. This is good that if you have two different locations that have different settings that are required, you can manage them individually here. Very, very useful. So you have your register settings, your receipt settings, your credit card settings, your loyalty settings, recon settings, your other settings, which is various other settings, and your control center settings, which is for uplifts here. Very powerful tool and extremely useful if you are individually managing locations as opposed to in mass. An example that I can think of is your receipt settings here. If you have a location that is supposed to have a different receipt as opposed to your other locations, you can go directly into that location and edit its receipt settings here. And then once it's saved and the POS is synced at the store, it will grab onto the new information. So now from here, now that we have this location set up, what we're going to do is go back to locations. And then here at the top right, we have Manage Location Groups. Now what this is say you have several stores, but all of them are spread out in different cities. You can organize your locations by those cities, or however you'd like, by adding a location group. So to create a location group, you're going to click on Manage Location Groups at the top right here. And then when this little window comes up, you're going to hit Add Location Group. So we're going to come up with a location group named, we'll just do Test 1. Imagine there was a city named Test 1. All right. So now that we have our test location group set up, we can either edit it or we can assign locations to it from this menu. So if we assign locations, when we click that, a list of all of our locations are going to come up. Taking a little bit of time to load here, but we're going to scroll down until we find the one that we had just created, which is right here. So after you select the one you'd like to add, you hit the little green square here in the middle, and we see that it's pulled over here to our selected list. We hit apply, and now that location has been saved to the location group. So now, as you continue to add locations, you can see you can create more location groups depending on what areas they're in, and assign those locations to those groups. It makes for managing your locations a lot easier. Now that we've done that, if we go and take a look at our point of sale, maintenance, settings and panels, POS panels. So here we have a list of all of our POS panels that we have. Now, what's neat about the cloud is that you can assign panels to different locations all from one location. Meaning if you're logged into Control Center anywhere with the proper permissions, you can change panels for all of your locations instantly. So for example, we're just going to add new. And we're not going to do too many edits, but not going to do any edits, and we're just going to save. So now that we've done that, we can cancel out of here or go back to our point of sale panels. And we have our test one that we created here. If we go over to settings, and then from settings to point of sale, device settings, my apologies, this is another way to actually manage your point of sale settings in mass, not for individual locations. So if we go back to locations, modify, my apologies. Actually, from this point, here at the top, you can see price book zones. So when we click over into price book zones, we can see all of our different price book zones, of course. We're going to create a new one here. We're going to do Now we can copy from a previously established price book zone, or we can build our new one from the ground up. Now you can check this to choose whether or not it is the default zone. We're not going to do that just because I don't want to make this one the default. But if we preview it, this is how our products are going to look. These are going to be their margins, price, costs, etc. We're going to and save. Now that we have this, if we go back to our locations and we go back to the location we just created, and we hit edit, we can now select our new price book zone. Now this is good for, you have different locations within different areas that have different tax rates or different pricing for the same product. Of course, every location is going to be different, and this is a nice way to better manage those. So now that we've selected this price book zone, we can hit save. And we can see here that it's saved and it's been added to the location groups. And that's how you actually set up and manage your location and location groups. So now that you have your location and location group set up, from here, what you want to do is go to point of sale, maintenance, and we're going to go take a look at taxes. So if you remember earlier, we had assigned Eddie's tax rate to that location. Now that was just because we needed to assign one that was already established. So we're going to go ahead and add a new one. We're not going to give it an account number. Now, when you're creating a tax rate, a new tax rate, you can see a list of all of your locations here. Now, we only want this one to apply to our new location. So we're going to skip over everything else. And let's just say flat tax, occupational tax. So now that we have that, we have given a rate to our new location. And again, if we scroll through, we can see that no other location is being affected by this. So now we're going to hit save. And now this one's been saved. So if we click over here to tax groups, tax groups almost work kind of like location groups. We are going to add new. Give it a test name. So now with a tax group, we're going to select our tax rate. We're going to select the one that we had just created, and we're going to add it. We can see that it has been enabled and it is selected down here. So now, whenever we apply this tax group to a set of locations, it's going to use that tax rate that we had set up for those locations. We're going to save. And then we're going to click over to POS flags. So POS flags have multiple uses, but for this scenario, we're going to talk about how POS flags can dictate the tax rate applied to certain items. So say you're in a state that has a higher tax on alcohol. You can set that up here. So we're going to click Add New. We're just going to give it a name. So now we're going to pretend that the tax group that we had just set up is for alcohol. So when we select the drop down for the tax group, we're going to click Test, the one we had just created, it is not a negative flag. We're not going to allow food stamps on it. It does have an age restriction, so we're going to add 21 because that is the general age for alcohol consumption. Use grandfather policy. We're not going to use that here. And then we can apply an excise tax to that POS flag. So now, if we go over here to the right, we can see manage excise tax locations. Since we're not going to be adding an excise tax, we're not going to worry about that. Then we have manage age restrictions locations. Now, if you're in a location that has different age restrictions for the same product, this is where this comes in handy. I know in Alabama, if I remember right, you got to be 19 to buy a pack of cigarettes, where in other places you got to be 18. It may have been increased, but this is a good way to manage which locations have what age restrictions for the products. So after we've set that up, we're going to save. So now that we've saved all of our tax information that we've just created, we're going to go back to our locations. And we're going to go back down to our test location that we created. My apologies. We actually apply the tax groups to it. So we're going to go back to our tax groups, or rather our POS flags. Modify. Location assignment, which this is for the excise tax. We can see here that it's now added. We save. So now, anytime this POS flag is used or assigned to an item or a department specifically that is used at this location, it will use the tax rate that we set up for that location, if you remember over here. Scroll all the way down. Right there. This has been another Fast Tracks webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Michael, and if anybody has any questions or any concerns, please feel free to call into support and we would be happy to help. You have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.